Hello, everybody. My name is Tananarive.
And I'm Stephen Barnes.
Welcome to our webinar on how horror helps turn pain into power. We have been doing these semi-weekly for some time now. Sometimes it's about Afrofuturism. This time it's more specifically about Black horror. And those of you who are political understand we've been through some pretty tough political times this week. Why am I so far out of the frame? There's been a lot going on, a lot of up and down, and I know a lot of people on Twitter, for example, who were like, I just have to step away and take a break. I can't deal with this right now. And it's okay to feel that way. Sometimes you have to recharge. But what we wanted to talk about is how the arts in general and how horror in particular can help us cope with these times of stress.
I think that it's critical to understand that art and consciousness on a personal or social level interact quite a bit. If you control the images that go on the screen, you control what people feel. And if you control images from the past, let's say, you control what people think history was. I just recently watched Godless on Netflix, and it's a Western. I've never seen an estimate of black cowboys, that was below 10%. And I've seen some that were as high as 25%. But
Right.
We all know that the number of black cowboys we've actually seen in movies from Hollywood is about 1%.
If that.
If that.
The series Deadwood was a particular disappointment to me because, come on, Deadwood is the city of the famed Deadwood Dick, the only black cowboy anyone even hears about.
So,
and even Deadwood
Bass
Dick.
Reeves, I suppose.
Even Deadwood Dick couldn't get.
Yeah, he's not
Deadwood.
even on the series.
So,
And in Godless, they actually have an entire settlement of Buffalo soldiers, build them up to be
so
really important to the plot, and then let's just say they are ill-used.
They don't work out like we hoped. So
yeah, it doesn't work out like
this
that.
is another
Spoiler.
example of how and why representation matters so much. And that means representation across all kinds of films. We like to see ourselves being heroic. We like to see ourselves being in love. We like to see ourselves working out family conflicts and dramas. And believe it or not, we like to see ourselves chased by zombies, chased by vampires.
If you guys would like to see more of yourselves, give us some likes. If you like the idea of representation, if you like the idea of movies and television shows that say that you were there in the past, you're here now, we'll be here in the future, give us some likes. Let's see that.
We really appreciate that. And then, of course, it makes a big difference to see your own face.
Yes, likes.
To see yourself
Very
reflected.
Good.
And, these are, well, as the saying goes, interesting times. And there's a lot of tumultuous political activity, a lot of fear, especially a lot of hurt feelings. And because so many of us are feeling fearful, it's that much more important to understand that how fear, first of all, interacts in our lives and what it may prevent us from doing or not, and also how we can wring out some of that fear in a safe way so that we confront the emotions, we process the emotions, and we move through the emotions.
Well, in my other hat, I do life coaching, and fear stops people from going after their dreams more than everything else combined.
Yes.
The proper syntax, they think about, love and fear compete for the same place in your heart. Very, very true. But you don't need to remove fear in order to go after the things you want. But if you can clarify why you love something, why you want something, then one of my expressions is put your fear behind you, your love in front of you, and run like hell.
Yes.
So it can be what is the right syntax? What is the right place to put the things that you're afraid of? What are you afraid of? I'm afraid for my family. I'm afraid for my country. I'm afraid for myself, my soul, my body, my mind, my physical possessions, whatever that is. Every story deals with either someone trying to move toward love or move away from fear. Horror films are films that are specifically designed to trigger the emotion of fear.
Absolutely.
Now, some of them want to allow you to complete that emotion so that when you walk out of the theater, you're feeling, wow, what an experience. You feel great. Others want you shuddering somewhat when you walk out of the theater. And both of them work. They're both legitimate. There are people who would prefer to walk out of the theater having had that complete roller coaster ride. Wow, what a show. Others prefer, what they would call real horror, where you are still in the abyss when you walk out.
Yes.
So they have these types.
There's value to both. You know,
there is value to both.
I'm kind of a sucker for a happy-ish ending. The most dissatisfaction I have with a horror film is basically where everybody dies, and you're like, for what? You know, why did I like?
We'll be talking about one of those.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get to. Well, The Devil's Rejects is one example. That's what you meant. Yeah. So to me, that's almost unwatchable.
The problem I have with The Devil's Rejects started with the coming attractions. There was just something seamy. There was just something wrong about the entire thing. It just felt sick top to bottom. I actually felt scared before I went to see the movie. I didn't want the lights to go down. I just had the sense I'm about to watch something I don't want to watch.
And my mother loved horror movies, but The Devil's Rejects was one of those movies that came out right before she started to get sick, and my sister tried to give her a copy. And that was when she couldn't deal with it either. That was too much. You know, and actually, speaking of my mother, this might be a good time to transition into my conversation about her. My mother, the late Patricia Stevens-Dew, I lost her in 2012, unfortunately. But she was the person who really turned me on to horror. A lot of us, in fact, like this, or give us a heart if you have a parent, a loved one, someone who raised you, who was the first one who got you into horror. You know, she was the one. My first memories are The Mummy, The Wolfman, Dracula, all those old Universal horror movies. Go to...
Which one?
Yeah, go down a little bit to this one.
All right.
So...
Should we show it?
Yeah, this is my mom and her sister, my Aunt Priscilla, when they were kids growing up in rural Florida. And in the middle is my late grandmother, Lottie Sears Houston. And those little girls basically grew up in rural Belglade, Florida, which was a segregated community. As this is the 1950s. She was born in 1939, and she grew up in the 40s and 50s. So when she heard about Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954, and oh my gosh, they're going to integrate the schools, she had always gone to segregated schools. So she decided she wanted to start a petition to get rid of the principal, to be ready. You know, and unfortunately, she never did see integration. A lot of people from that era never actually saw integration in the 1950s. So then she went on from her segregated high school to an HBCU, a historically black college, Florida A&M University in Tallahassee. She and her sister, my Aunt Priscilla Kaza, both went. They were both called Stevens, Patricia Stevens and Priscilla Stevens at the time. And for the first 2 years, they were just normal students. But she was still bothered by segregation, being considered a second-class citizen under Jim Crow America. So in 1959, you can go back up to one of the earlier ones. Mom and Aunt Priscilla went to a workshop by an organization called CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, and they met Dr. King, and they learned tactics of nonviolent direct action. And boom, the next thing you know, they were starting a CORE chapter, knocking on the doors of their classmates in their dormitory, trying to build it up one person at a time. And then the Greensboro sit-ins came in 1960. So this was a big moment for my mom's little fledgling CORE chapter to actually have their first direct action. So some students and a couple people from the community who weren't students, who just saw what was happening, went to a lunch counter at a Woolworth in Tallahassee, Florida, sat at the lunch counter, and they were arrested there for trying to eat at a public lunch counter. This is where we were in 1960, Tallahassee, Florida. So my mom, my Aunt Priscilla, and 6 other, I think it was, Florida A&M students spent 49 days in jail rather than pay their fine, which made them part of the first jail in as a part of the 1960 Civil Rights era. They got a telegram from Dr. King while they were in jail. Jackie Robinson, the baseball great, sent them diaries to show their experiences. And then this photo, the one on the right, is a photo that came out while they were on an actual speaking tour. You know, they were on a speaking tour talking about their experiences, and they really were feeling like they had an impact in the world. But unfortunately, at a protest march in 1960, a police officer, they were trying to get arrested students out of jail, and my mother was known to be a student leader. So a police officer actually went up to her and threw a tear gas canister in her face. This is not that incident, but this is a similar incident, and basically said, "I want you." And from that time on, you'll notice in both of these photos, my mother is the one being manhandled by the police officers in the left of the bigger photograph. And in the photograph on the right, you see her there with my dad, Attorney John Dew, who is still living and maybe even watching right now. But you notice in both of those pictures, she's wearing dark glasses. Ever since that tear gassing incident in 1960, her whole adult life, the whole time I knew my mother, she always wore dark glasses because her eyes were very sensitive to light after that tear gassing. And when Florida A&M did a reenactment of this demonstration just a couple years ago, I saw in the comments section of the Tallahassee Democrat that a lot of people who were tear gassed in 1960 had lingering problems with their eyes after that. So this is something I think about when I see people getting tear gas now.
Well, I think about stuff like that when people try to say, well, it's been over for 150 years. Get over it.
Yeah.
It's not over. And their ignorance, there is nothing worse than ignorance masquerading as wisdom.
Right.
They think they know, and they don't know. Yeah. And these people have votes. These people write textbooks in schools. These people teach our children. And they have this attitude, well, it's been over for so long. Nobody alive ever owned a slave. But the horror did not end, arguably, until the late 60s.
And certainly the white supremacy has not ended until to this day and moving forward. So my mother was able to enact change through her activism, and she was an inspiration to a lot of people, but there was a cost. With that activism came trauma. So she was wearing the dark glasses. You see in all these photos, she's already wearing the dark glasses, even as a young woman. And some of those wounds that she wore were external, like her eyes, and others were internal. And this is why I think she was drawn to the healing power of horror to help her confront her rage. I mean, you try to be nonviolent. It's going to take everything in you not to resist when you're being manhandled. I have never been tested this way. But if someone flinches away, if your arm is grabbed, that's called a human reflex. That's not called resisting arrest. Right. So she had to sit on and bury all of this emotion in order to be a nonviolent protester. And also, remember, rage is a mask over fear. Because beneath the rage is a fear that your country not only doesn't love you, but will kill you.
Yeah, I think I remember Larry Fishburne in the Tuskegee Airmen talking about how he had two questions. How does he feel about his country, and how does his country feel about him?
Right.
Your country, in some ways, is the mega family. It's a macro family. They protect you, they nurture you, they teach you. And when you get the feeling that your country does not fully feel your own humanity, but you still want to, fight for your country, protect your country, involve yourself in the political system of your country, I think it creates a kind of insanity. I think you really do risk ripping your own heart apart, trying to feel that you have a country that does not consider you to be as worthwhile as when I was a kid, I could see a picture of the Senate, and every single person in that Senate was white. Most of them were white males.
Right.
Okay, so it's like this was representative of America. In other words, all the people who were worthy to actually to lead were of the other group, the same group that wrote the Encyclopedia Britannica that said that I was a second-class citizen and not as intelligent as a white person. I had that sense, this is what I'm dealing with. How do I deal with it? I am sure that is part of why I went into science fiction, fantasy, why I enjoyed horror as an opportunity to kind of vent my emotions.
Yeah, and that was I really believe my mother did. You can avoid paralysis, you can avoid hate, for example. We were not raised with hate in our lives. She could exorcise those racial demons in fictitious scenarios, monsters, to face the world's real-life monsters, some of whom are smiling at you. And I really believe her love of horror helped her maintain her mental health. And when I said I wanted to write, and I wanted to write horror, she was right there supporting me, and she got it. And I wanted to talk about my mother and the 60s and the tumult of the civil rights era to transition to one of the most iconic horror films ever made, which also happens to have a black lead in actor Dwayne Jones, George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Let's see some likes and hearts if you've seen, even if you were scared of Night of the Living Dead. It was the beginning of the modern zombie era. It created the subgenre of zombie films within horror films. There had been other horror films that use zombies kind of as mindless, shambling. They've been stripped of their identity.
Look, they used zombies from the Haitian magic thing, where basically, you were reduced to being a shambling thing and could be ordered around. George Romero created the trope of the flesh-eating ghoul.
Right.
You die, you come back from the dead, you eat people. So what Robert McKee would call that is the negation of the negation. What is worse than death? Living death, where you are dealing death to the people that you love.
So on the surface, I mean, let's just say you're a horror fan. On the surface, you can see why Night of the Living Dead is so terrifying just on face value. The dead are coming back to life. Poor Barbara's brother. It's chasing her.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
People you thought you knew are trying to kill you now. This is really scary stuff. And that you have a child eating a mother. You have all kinds of really, really graphic horror images that some of which had never been seen before. So there's that part of it that makes it so...
I remember Roger Ebert. I first heard about Night of the Living Dead in an article in Reader's Digest. And they excerpted his article to make it sound like he was totally horrified and totally against the film. The truth is that he thought it was a very effective horror movie. But their perspective on it was that it was just one of the worst things ever done. Which meant, of course, that I immediately wanted to go out and see it. My mother certainly wasn't going to let me go out and see something like that. But I did eventually. I still remember the day I finally managed to catch a screening of Night of the Living Dead at the Will Turn Theater, Washington and Wilshire. Wilshire and Western in Los Angeles. And I think it was probably a midnight show.
Yes.
And I can remember the level of fear that I felt. I was sitting in that audience looking at the exits, wondering which exit I would run out of if the people around me turned into zombies.
Let me ask
that
you,
was a scary movie.
Do you think it even had a greater impact on you because Dwayne Jones, the lead, was black?
It had to have. I mean, I understood I was watching something that was unusual when he was not only black, but he was not taking orders from the white man who ordinarily would be bossing people around.
Let's look at this photo for one moment. Dwayne Jones with his co-star. I cannot remember her name. I'm so sorry. But he's taking off her shoes. This is almost like a Cinderella with the prince scene where he's comforting her. There's one point where he carries her bride style. There's one point when he actually knocks the hell out of her, punches her in the face after she slaps him. So there's a lot happening.
And there's a scene where he beats the hell out of the white man.
But there's a lot happening with this black male and white female imagery.
Right.
Let's take a step back to 1915, D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation, which basically, A, was the birth of modern Hollywood, but B, was the birth of modern Hollywood. It was the first blockbuster. It was the biggest selling movie for years, probably more than 15 years. And it established the monstrosity of black men who would deign to desire, chase, or want to marry white women. Two major emotional plot points turn on black men or a biracial man, either proclaiming his love for a white woman, or this one who actually literally chased, he's in blackface, but he's supposed to be black, chasing a white woman through the woods. So please do not underestimate how powerful this image of a black man and a white woman is. That's just for starters. And then, as Steve was saying, Dwayne Jones was not only not taking orders from anyone, he was giving the orders, right? So, this is a great GIF. I love this GIF with the moving images. Look, he's punching the guy, and he kills a whole lot of white zombies. And so... Now, here's where the conversation gets interesting. George A. Romero unfortunately passed away this year. I always thought I would have a chance to sit down and talk to him about Night of the Living Dead and why he chose black male leads, not only in this, but in his subsequent films. Now, the story goes, and I read a recent interview where he was repeating this story, that casting Dwayne Jones was purely an accident. He was a friend of his. He did the reading. He did great in the reading, so they gave it to Dwayne Jones. But even if that's an accident, what you have when you're looking through your camera as the director and you're seeing your footage is, oh my God, it's 1968. It was released shortly before the assassination of Dr. King, but certainly in the midst of a lot of racial strife. It's 1968. I have a black man, an armed black man who is not afraid of white people, an armed black man who is not afraid of white people, who is taking charge and beating up white people who put him in danger. And who slow him down. I think that had to resonate on some level. It's very explosive imagery.
I think that they had to have had a conversation There's no way they didn't have a conversation. Should we hire this guy? Should we cast him? And I think that Romero sensed that there was something special here, because he spent the rest of his career trying to chase that lightning in a bottle that he captured.
Yes,
I mean, that in other words, that on the one hand, even if he'd been white, the movie would have worked much the same. And there are people who claim that race has nothing to do with it, but I think that they're wrong. It might have little to do with it. You might
or less to do with it than some might make of it.
Yeah, you might be able to say that, but you can't say nothing, because what we know is there had been very few movies, if any, where a black man was giving white people orders. Especially, you think about, this was the moment in time when black people were standing up and saying, we're not going to let you put your foot on our head anymore. So it had to be acting out and playing with some pretty core, powerful imagery.
Yes.
And it had to be tapping into some audience fears. What happens if, because I think a lot of the mythologies of slavery in the South operated to try to keep the genie in that bottle. We did this thing called enslave these people. In order to do that, we had to steal from them generation after generation. We have to keep them from ever getting even. Because if they get even, not only will they want to take back what we stole from them, but they might even want to kill us.
Right.
So the idea of a black man with this kind of power and authority had to be terrifying on a level that a lot of white audiences could not even admit to themselves that it was frightening. I think that it added to the impact of the film when you have an emotional content that is deep and powerful and that people often could not admit to themselves. Nobody that I saw, or almost nobody that I saw, ever addressed that aspect of it directly, and yet clearly this was fairly unique imagery. Yeah. So if nobody addressed it, then I have to believe that it was hitting people on an unconscious level.
Definitely. So you're scared of the little, mother-eating child, but you're also unconsciously afraid at what Dwayne Jones as the lead represents at this point in history, which at that time was 1968. And of course, you see this image on the left where, sorry, spoiler if you haven't seen it, but it did come out in 1968.
What are you doing taking a horror class if you have not seen Night of the Living Dead?
So Dwayne Jones survives the zombies only to be shot down by the armed white mob outside that is looking for zombies and does not hesitate before shooting him through a window, really before even finding out if he was human or zombie. And that is a 1-2 punch, which frankly I think would have been very similar if a black artist had made Night of the Living Dead, because that was real. That's what would happen to Dwayne Jones.
See, that's one of the things where I think it was far more powerful than if he had been white, because what you had at the end of the first movie was the assumption that society goes on.
Yeah.
That that the good guys win. When the black man is killed by the white guys, it is a return to the natural order, not just of zombies and living people, but of white and black people.
Yes, and some of you might have seen The Late Show with Stephen Colbert not long ago when Jordan Peele was on talking about my black horror class, The Sunken Place, and black horror, and Colbert was kind of challenging it. Well, what other black horror is there? And Peele mentioned specifically Night of the Living Dead. And Colbert had a very similar reaction that a lot of horror fans have. That's not black horror. Well, we say it is black horror. And the reason, and black audiences certainly did receive it that way. It did extraordinarily well with black audiences who, whether or not the director's intentions were conscious or not, they saw what was on the screen, and what was on the screen was a reflection of that fear of mob violence, that fear of lynching lingering from the 50s and 60s, that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you fight, the mob will shoot you down.
Right. And I think that Romero had accidentally stumbled into a social awareness, that people talked about that he found himself being talked about on an academic way.
Yeah.
And he realized, oh my God, I stumbled into something that was bigger than what I wanted, which was just to create. We have a picture of George Romero here.
Is that Romero? I wonder.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know who that was.
You have a picture of George Romero.
Oh, does that show the question on the screen too? No.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want it.
All right.
Yeah, the question shows.
All right.
So, yeah, forget that one. But in any case, the next film we wanted to talk about in terms of meeting its social times would have to be with Get Out. And Stephen had a personal resonance with you because of experiences that you have had.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first, several of my girlfriends when I was in college were white, and I can clearly still remember meeting, the father of one of them, and he immediately basically had a, angina attack. Went out to the car and basically had a heart attack. And she had not warned me that this could happen. And I remember that was the only time in my life being in relationship with her. That was the only time in my life I ever wished I wasn't black. It was because I just didn't like the fact that my being black had complicated something that on one level should have been very simple. Just, I have a relationship with someone, and we care about each other. I never questioned her, really. But I did question what I had to go through in order to just be with her in that sense.
Yes.
And the day that she actually, told her father in no uncertain terms that we were, living together and so forth and so on, was painful to me. I think that I did not put that thought into my own work very much. I was afraid of doing that. But years go by, and I see Jordan Peele doing Get Out. And in comments that he made, it's very clear that he had great concerns about who was he in the world. He's biracial, his mother's white. No matter where he goes, he finds himself being a little bit of an outsider. And I think that the question, can I love? Can I be loved? Who cares about me? Who sees me? Is a very painful one, and it goes deep. Now, art, I think, is self-expression. It is trying to communicate something that is deep within us. Successful art is self-expression plus communication. So you want to learn the tropes of your discipline. You want to decide what genre you're going to do in it. Now, I think that Jordan Peele had done this primarily through comedy.
Yes.
But what we know is that inside him for 10 years was horror.
Right.
There was something he wanted to work on that had to do with fear. And that, to me, suggests that he was dealing with this fear within himself on some deep level. Now, he could have, if you've seen Get Out, you know that the ending, is relatively, it has a touch of upbeat. After going through hell.
Cheering.
Yes. But the original ending of it was downbeat.
Yeah, more like Night of the Living Dead, actually.
More like Night of the Living Dead, that's right. And whereas I think black audiences especially would have said, yeah, that's realistic. On another level, what he had done in the course of that movie was tap into a very deep sense, that black people have, that we don't even know who our allies are. We don't know who we can trust. But also, if you take a look at the success of the film, it also tapped into white audiences' fear that they cannot be trusted. Fear that they will not be trusted. That that question, what will it ever take for us to be able to embrace each other's humanity? From his point of view, from a black person's point of view, can you see us? From the white person's point of view, has there been so much damage that we will never be able to come together? And I think that this film, by having the courage to go deeply into those questions, the same questions that I was asking with my girlfriend back in college, in essence, that was then leavened with enough humor to enable you to release the pain, release the fear. I think that was what did the magic in this movie. So I know that when I'm working with my own students, I always ask them to tap into the thing that they're afraid of, tap into the thing that they love, tap into the thing that makes them happy. Put that on the page, and then learn the skills necessary to communicate that emotion to the audience. I think that America has been dealing with this particular issue one way or the other. They've been kicking the can down the road for 300 years.
Yeah, but now
the next generation is going to deal with it. No, the generation dealing with it is here.
We've hit the wall. The wall has already been built.
There's nothing about the racial question is not going to get kicked down the road to another generation. I think that the gender question. So
Well, I wanted to say, for those of you who are just joining us, I'm Tananarive, and this is Stephen Barnes. And I'm sorry, he's Stephen Barnes.
I'm Stephen Barnes.
Sorry. And if you stay until the end, we forgot to say this. We have a surprise announcement if you stay until the end.
Yes.
So we've been here about a half an hour. We have about 5 more minutes to go, but please do try to stay until the end. Before you moved on to gender, which is why I held up my finger, I wanted to go to the breakthrough concept of the sunken place, which is what I think has resonated so deeply with so many audiences. It's the moment, both in the trailer and when I was in the film, when I knew, okay, he's going to bring it. He did not come to play with y'all. Okay, Jordan Peele, you're used to seeing Jordan Peele make you laugh, but he is not here to play with y'all when he came up with the sunken place. And it works so great as a metaphor, whether it's political unconsciousness, that long nap of that post-racial dream that everyone is waking up from because that was never really real, whether it's people who are willing to sell out the needs of the greater community for their own personal benefit. Ben Carson, Clarence Thomas, whether we all have different ideas of what the sunken place is. When Peele came to my class at UCLA, he talked about the sunken place as mass incarceration. He said he literally started crying when he was writing the script, and he realized that the sunken place was mass incarceration, that theft of Black bodies, the warehousing of Black bodies, all those lives that have been interrupted, all those families that have been disrupted, and it's both internal, he said, and external. And that's why I named my horror course that he came to visit the sunken place, because the sunken place is, to me, the concept that really elevates Get Out beyond an interesting film to an actually very important film.
Now, I was surprised to hear him say that. And whenever you hear an artist describing what their work is about, I take it seriously. But I also think that there was another element, that the sunken place is also the place where you hide yourself. You know, you offer the world an image of whiteness. You know, you talk white, you dress white. In other words, that people will accuse you of. And your blackness, you keep back because you don't want to offend. You don't want to trigger something. You're careful about your body language. Yeah. You're careful about you try not to react when people follow you in a store. Yes. Stuff like that. So the sunken place is that place that you hide your fear. You hide, how you really feel, because you want to get along. You want to go along to get along.
Exactly. So, you don't want to draw attention to yourself. You would I used to walk with my eyes cast down. I grew up in a recently integrated neighborhood. We were the integratees. And I realized when I was in 5th grade that I was walking with my eyes cast down to the sidewalk because I did not want to provoke anyone. I didn't even want to be noticed. So you're very right about that.
And I think that when I was about to talk about gender, first of all, if any of you have ever had to hide yourselves in order to survive in the world, because of race or gender or sexual orientation or politics, other things, you give us some likes. But because I'm going to guess that anyone who likes horror does not feel fully integrated by life, does not feel like they're able to show the world, the mask, to just open themselves completely.
Here I am.
That's right. So I'm saying I'm thinking that the next Get Out, that anyone who can see the gap between the way the world sees you and what you feel about yourself, and can actually speak to that gap. That there is a Get Out to be done about gender. There is a Get Out to be done about sexual orientation. Right. There is a Get Out to be done about immigration, about religion. Yes. That the gap between what society says and what you feel, that truth that you have in your heart, that don't you see me? Don't you understand what it costs for me to not be myself in the world, to carry this mask? If you can tap into that emotion and then find a way to express that to the world, so that they can see how you're feeling about this. And maybe they have an aha moment of what it has cost you and what it has cost America to promote these lies. You could do the next Get Out. This is one of the reasons why we teach the way we do.
Yeah.
Why we're teaching to younger versions of ourselves.
Yes.
People who are artists who want to take that political or philosophical gold, that within themselves, want to sink that drill bit deep and hit gold and bring it up to the surface. The diamonds, heat and pressure makes diamonds. There's somebody out there who's listening to this right now, who I know has a story that they want to tell. It's very clear, to us, because we've had that experience with so many people. We had a question over there that somebody was asking.
Just a compliment, actually. I wanted to. Let's answer questions after.
Okay,
To stay on the topic. But one thing I want to point out is that one thing Peel talked about in my class was this idea of the microaggressions. I mean, on the one level, some people miss the point of Get Out because they dismiss the premise as entirely fictitious. Well, there's no family that's really kidnapping people and putting them in their basement, so this isn't about real life. Whereas at the beginning of the film, the little microaggressions like, oh, I would have voted for Obama for a third term because you can't think of anything else to say to a black person, hey, my man, or all those sorts of things, those little microaggressions. As Peel said in the classroom, it's one thing if it's one person, and I've been guilty of it, by the way. I have, at least in my own head, thought maybe I was with someone who was a person of color from a culture I wasn't that familiar with, and found myself saying things that were reaching for kinship that, probably the kind of stuff they hear all the time. And it's like, so you go to a party and everybody does it, and it's the death by 1,000 cuts. And that's one part, but here's the other part that's real about otherness. This is a photo. On the left, you have Emmett Till, who was murdered at the age of 14 in 1955. And then Tamir Rice, who was only 12 when he was shot by a police officer in Cleveland just a couple years ago. This is the true price of otherness. You are not somebody's child. You are not fully human. You are on face value a threat to the very structure of our society.
And what's even worse is they will then deny that they feel that way. Not a week ago, it was probably 5 days ago, I had this white guy talking about Get Out, and he was saying that the writer of Get Out must have been imagining about race relations in America. They knew nothing about it. And literally tried to argue with me about whether or not black people actually empathized with the point of view in Get Out. And I took a look at his friends list. He knew the only black person on his entire friends list was my wife.
And I'm not claiming him.
Exactly. It's like
I don't know he
would reject what she herself said about this film and black people. The entire class full of primarily black students going right on, black Twitter exploding about it. But this guy who knows no black people except us will not listen. It conflicted with what he needs desperately to believe about what America is. So this is pain. It's deep pain. This is why Jordan Peele, this movie made over $250 million because he managed to communicate something that America had been denying. In deep denial about.
Yeah, even put it into words almost.
It's dangerous. He did a dangerous thing, but because he had the courage and the capacity to do it, he was rewarded massively. And the gates of Hollywood are open. People want to know. They want to hear what he's going to say next. So people are both afraid of it and intoxicated by it. So what I keep trying to tell my students, will you please trust your voices? Will you please trust your hearts? Yes.
Let's go to our faces for a little while while we're talking to you. We really appreciate that you all are here with us this afternoon. Thank you so much. These are really important topics.
Yeah.
And I think because some of the racial messaging and the history goes over people's heads, he's got Jesse Owens in there. He's got the cotton in the ears. There's so much to deconstruct in that film.
Yes.
Some people are missing that. So I think, like Colbert, they don't even really get what an important film.
And Colbert would consider himself an ally, and I think that in many ways he is. He simply is unaware of how bad it is. Unaware of how much we've buried those emotions.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to say, and I've said this several times. Everybody listening to this, white, black, male, female, gay, straight, Christian, atheist, whatever, you have had to bury aspects of yourself. The very things you've had to bury are going to be the source of power for you in your art.
Yes.
That is the stuff that we need. The very things you've had to shut away, that's the stuff to bring out. When we teach this stuff, when you taught students, you asked your students to make little movies. Okay,
yes.
Or do an essay. And they exploded with creativity.
I had 2 student short films in my Sunken Place class at UCLA that blew me away. They were just so well done. They really got not only sort of the racial themes, but the scary, how to do jump scares. I was so proud of them. And you all, some of you can do that too. So,
yes, but I think that all of you can do this. All of you. I would love to see everybody here making a little movie, writing a story, posting it on YouTube, putting links to it. This is how you see the world. I think that art is important. That art knits the human race together. And our voices, have been I think that our voices are powerful right now, as Black people, as children of the diaspora, because those voices have been denied. That there is power in there. The very pain that you feel can turn into your power. That we're talking about turning pain into power. This is it. Use it to drive your art, and you win. You act your very oppressors compressed the spring that your art can release, and there is power in that once you learn how to use it.
That's a great metaphor. And then those who are allies and potential allies, first of all, you nurture your own community. You give your own community the language and a visualization to express their trauma, to express their pain, to therefore expel it, to share it, to feel that it has been validated, that it is understood, so that you can move on to whatever the next steps are, so you don't have to drown in it.
You speak your truth as an individual. You speak your community's truth, so they feel there's nothing, what happens to a dream deferred? What happens to a dream, a pain that is unexpressed?
Right.
And if I cannot speak my truth, that in prisons, I heard this statistic, that there is an inverse relationship in prisons between the violence of the crime and the size of the vocabulary of the prisoner. Right. That more a human being can express themselves openly.
Good one.
The more fluidly you can express yourself, the less likely you are to lash out. In Melville's book, Billy Butt, there's a character who is almost mute, and the only way he can express himself is he finally lashes out and kills someone with one punch. If you can speak it, you don't need to be destroyed by it. You can express it. You can let that poison out.
And I'd like to tell a personal story about letting the poison out. Like many of you, I was devastated when Octavia E. Butler died in 2006. I could spend a whole webinar talking about that and how devastating that was. But out of that experience, and I just want to say it wasn't just the personal loss, because I knew her not as well as Steve. Steve really knew her very well. It wasn't just the personal loss. It was also the sense of the loss of all of her work to come. And after she died, I felt sort of a responsibility to look at the political landscape we were living in at the time. We were under the Bush administration, that there was war, the anti-Islam sentiment, all kinds of things happening that I thought Octavia would have definite opinions about. The healthcare debate and struggle for Americans just to have access to healthcare. So I decided I wanted to write a book that would more directly confront those questions. And it was called Blood Colony. I dedicated it to Octavia Butler. I had quotes from Octavia throughout the book. And it was really my feeble attempt to try to channel some of the issues. It's not the way she would have done it, certainly, but my language is horror. Her language was science fiction. So in my language, to try to find a way to confront those issues, and that's where I came up with Blood Colony. I'd always wanted to be a writer from the time I was a kid. And like I told you, my mother really nurtured me in my attempts to write, and she was my momager, as a matter of fact, when I started publishing. She was the one who got in touch with the publicists and made appointments for me. So she was 100% behind me when I started publishing, but there was a long road to get there. First of all, even though I started out as a writer, writing about little black girls, the more I studied writing and was exposed to the quote-unquote canon, the older I got through high school and college, I was writing white male protagonists because I was literally losing sight of myself in my fiction. And I was ignoring my drives both to write horror because I thought that would not be respected. And, my mom and father are respected civil rights activists. I have to be careful what I write. This kind of voice in my head telling me you can't write horror. But also in the black fiction I loved, the Alice Walker and the Toni Morrison, I didn't know how to channel that rural black experience that has been so rich for so many other black women writers. And I had just sort of started retreating into what I call epiphany stories from the point of view of black males.
I'd love to hear you talk about
white males.
I'd love to hear you talk about a couple of the thematic threads, because certainly healthcare isn't. Anybody can read that and see your concern about healthcare. What are some of the other threads that were winding into that book?
Well, Blood Colony takes place in a world where I have these African immortals. Some of you may have heard of them, where their blood has healing powers. You see, there is a gilded vial of the blood. I love this. Is one of my favorite covers, as a matter of fact. And they've been distributing that blood, but because Big Pharma can't regulate it, and it's been made illegal, much like, say, cannabis in the United States is finally starting to crawl back toward legal status. But it's the same kind of thing. You've got forces against it. You've got Big Pharma pushing against it. You've got alcohol companies pushing against it. You've got law enforcement pushing against it. You've got, what are we going to do with all these prisons, right? So I talked to medical experts at the time who agreed with me that if this blood did exist and if it were on the marketplace, it would be illegal. Okay, so we need to get that. It would be illegal.
And I just recently, I saw somebody talking about the violence connected with pot usage. And what he was saying was the only thing he would say is that you pot smokers are guilty of promoting this violence. And I kept pointing out to him, it's not intrinsic to the nature of the substance. It's the fact that it's illegal.
Right.
If you think that, why aren't you also blaming law enforcement? Why aren't you also blaming the legislators? Because if the nature of the thing itself is not dangerous, if it is caused by the fact that it is illegal, you'd think that you'd spend equal amounts of time on the other side of it. This is what would happen if there was healing blood.
Right, and
it would be made illegal, and people would be blamed for the violence that came from it, rather than blaming the powers that be for making it illegal.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost exactly what happens in this novel, because it's illegal and it's pursued by law enforcement, and it's also a victim of propaganda as being a bioweapon.
So there's healthcare and there's also drug enforcement.
Drug enforcement,
are part of the thematics that you want into there.
The Department of Homeland Security is involved because the drug couriers are actually being labeled as terrorists.
Okay.
I wanted to get that in there because there was a lot of talk of everyone being a terrorist. Gee, where have I heard that talk? Oh, right now. So I really, and also, so I tied all of those elements together. And there were some other themes that had to do with war, etc. But the primary, I used the term the new Jim Crow. One of my characters' father tells him that drugs are the new, jail is the new Jim Crow. Before that term was in popular use, I reach across there. So those were some of the themes that were in there. But as a young writer, I could hardly dream of the day when I would have been writing a book like Blood Colony, because I had run into this wall of not seeing myself in my fiction. It was only after reading Mama Day by Gloria Naylor and interviewing Anne Rice by phone that I gave myself permission, in the case of Rice, to write horror and to feel that I could be respected. And in the case of Gloria Naylor and Mama Day, to be a Black woman and embrace the metaphysical in my writing. So both of those two things gave me the opportunity to really investigate what my own voice was. I wrote my first novel in 9 months, the between, to try to meet the deadline for a contest. I didn't win the contest, and I put it in a drawer for a year, and I thought, oh, maybe I'm no good. But when I finally started sitting it out a year later, midway through writing My Soul to Keep, my second novel, I started actually shopping the between again after, wiping off my bruises, and I sold it. So I was a published writer.
When people make you doubt your own voice?
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is that you need creativity in every aspect of life. When people start convincing you that you cannot trust the voices in your head, the deep creative voices, what?
Oh, can you put the screen back?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
All right. No, always interrupt. Always interrupt. When people can get you to mistrust your own voice, basically they're gaslighting you. They're saying, don't you trust your own voice. Don't you trust your own experience. Trust me. I know more about you than you know about
Has anybody heard anybody who knows more about you than you know about you? Has anyone tried to, say, explain you to you?
Talk about mansplaining, white-splaining, straight-splaining, American-splaining. I mean, I think all of us have probably been guilty of that, and all of us have been victims of it, or will be eventually. Young people telling old people what their experience is of life.
Right.
It is horrible.
Yes.
That denial of humanity. If they can get you to stop trusting your own voice, the they, and oftentimes they no longer trust their own voices either. In other words, it's like, join us, be one of the living dead with us.
Right.
Stop having ambition. Stop trusting your heart. Stop trying to really be happy. Just consume. Be satisfied with buying things and being part of the faceless crowd.
I like to learn and to look at things critically. I mean, people have concerns about something I've written. I'll listen to that concern. Like, for instance, Master of None, when Aziz Ansari did his series about people of Indian descent speaking with accents and how they had to put on those accents in their auditions. And a lot of Asian American actors doing that, including actors on Fresh Off the Boat, which is the show I watched. I was like, oh my God, I never even thought about that. They're doing that for my comfort so that it fits a stereotype that they think is in my head,
That's right,
as the viewer. And I had no idea I was party to this kind of pain on the part of actors who feel like they just can't be themselves. And that's just like skating the surface. There are a million examples of situations where we don't perceive everything because it's outside of our experience. So how else will you learn except if other people show you?
I think that the most important thing you can do, I mean, I talk about this, is to get in touch with that creative child inside you. To get in touch with the part of you that cannot be threatened, intimidated, bribed, or blackmailed. The sort of older wisdom part.
Right.
That if you can do that, you can listen to the voice of your creativity. And you can also listen to the voice of your wisdom. Then what your adult self has to do is to execute on a daily basis. I told a story of losing connection with my own child self by pitching stories that were not only not of meaning to me, but violated my sense of what is appropriate in the world to people who were just Philistines. They just had no concern for the corruption of what they were doing. And I was just trying to make that money. And what happened is I spent a year in hell, just blocked from any depth, any real connection to myself. And I really had to actually meditate every day to try to reestablish that connection with that kid self of me. And I made a promise at that point that I would never violate him again, that I would never ask him to do something that was inappropriate. It was later that I found out that when I was introduced to the notion that I was violating myself by not speaking my truth on a racial basis. Mm-hmm. There are other things too, just in terms of there are only two questions that artists or human beings need to ask themselves or can ask themselves. Who am I and what is true? And that's what you're asking in your art. And when your answer for who you are is different, once again, than what the culture says, you have just found a place of energy. You found a landmine. You can use the power of that to drive your art. That is a gift. If you have the courage to look at that, the courage to speak up. This is what we're hoping to do. When we do these shows, we want to educate you if you're just a fan. We want to inspire you to inspire your students if you're a teacher. But if you are a creator, if you want to create things, then what we're trying to tell you is the very pain you feel is the power that you need to move your career forward.
And Black horror is a way to convey that pain that is unique. And for horror fans who just like a unique way to be scared, an exotic way to be scared, they're drawn to it because it's different. It's not the same, teenagers being chased through the woods story you've seen a million times. Right. So there's more depth to it. There's more richness to it. It makes you think. Someone on Twitter was saying that watching Get Out made him see racial relations in a completely different way.
Yes.
There's no higher compliment you can pay any piece of art, much less a horror movie, which is why I'm so excited about Get Out that I created an entire course at UCLA around it called The Sunken Place.
And it was the fact that we were getting Twitters and emails from all over the world, people who were interested in that class and made us finally ask the question just a few weeks ago, what can we do to help everybody? Because
everybody doesn't attend UCLA.
Let me make this perfectly clear that it's not a mistake. You're not mistaken to think that there are people who are against you speaking your truth. That is the truth. It is not. You're not hallucinating or paranoid to think that there are forces in the world that do not want us to come together as a people, that are trying to divide us rather than unite us. There really are such people. And in
some ways, they've never been more vocal, or at least not until in recent years, they haven't been more vocal.
And they will pretend that they're doing it for your benefit. They will pretend to be your friends, and what I refer to as smiling monsters. And what I suggest is that you do not try to fight them. You do not argue with them on Facebook. What you do instead is you comfort the members of your tribe. Who are your tribe? people who are like you, people who are allies to people like you, people who are willing to embrace the unity of humanity. We create stories. Jordan Peele was only trying to create a horror movie for black audiences who had not been served. And because he spoke his truth, he found huge numbers of white people who said, yes, we want to see this.
Right.
And what I'm saying is you're going to find the same thing. Whatever your issue is, whatever it is, you take a look. When we teach you about black horror, if you are black, you'll be able to use this directly. But if you're a woman, you'll be able to use it indirectly. If you're gay, if you've had struggles with health care, whatever that thing is, there is a story you could tell that will go to the heart of the madness that you feel when you look out at the world. Don't people see how crazy this is? If you can tell that story, there's money to be made.
Absolutely. Amy Alexander was asking a little bit earlier about other films that may not have the same quality as Get Out, but were nonetheless impactful films and of their time from the blaxploitation era. Films like Abby, which I teach in my UCLA class, Blackula, which a lot of you have seen. They're very campy, they're very schlocky, but at the same time, they represented the era and the concerns of the era. Just as a quick example, Abby, I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. Abby is somewhat problematic, but Blackula, I'll go to that one. Blackula begins with a black noble going to visit Count Dracula to try to argue against the slave trade. He is from an African culture. And this is, by the way, in the 1700s. So how often have you seen that as a black audience member? He had a Swahili name. He knows Swahili. There are all kinds. So we are going to start a 6-week course for you, not just a UCLA student. Anyone can register for The Sunken Place now. It will be a 6-lesson course called The Sunken Place, which is an overview course of both literature and films that are either by and center black artists, or like Candyman centers black artists, but also has some racialized imagery that we might want to critique and get into. And also The Serpent in the Rainbow on the top left
yes, and Night of the Living Dead
is one that we may also need to critique a little bit. But we're looking at, Get Out did not appear in a vacuum. There have been, in the right corner, you see Dwayne Jones from Night of the Living Dead, but in a vampire film a lot of you haven't seen before called Ganja and Hess, where he plays the lead role, and I think is even better in Ganja and Hess than he is in Night of the Living Dead. But it's not just movies. You know, a lot of people think that it's just movies. It's not that. We also have a lot of authors that we teach in this course. Novel Hopkinson has written some horror. Victor LaValle, a lot of you have seen Victor's work, and he has actually a project in TV development right now. Cheshire Burke is one of the writers that I teach. Also, Kai Ashanti Wilson, a rather new writer, has a great horror short story called The Devil in America that's a part of the course. So this is a 6-week online course, and we have a promise for a special guest, Jordan Peele, who said when Steve asked, hey, you came to Tananarive's class at UCLA, would you be willing to appear via Skype to our course? What did he say to you?
He said basically, of course. Well, you don't even have to ask.
I mean, boom. So, we're going to have to try to pin him down with his Oscar schedule because that Oscar drumbeat is loud. But he has said he'll appear, and we also have video of his appearance at UCLA, so we're covered either way. It's a 6-part. Our past webinar guests have included directors, Hugo and Nebula Award-winning writers, Oscar-winning producers. Some of you have taken our courses, so you know that when we have a course, we bring it for you guys. And the Black Horror course will not be any different than that. And it's the kind of thing that you might take if you are a writer, if you're a filmmaker, if you're just a horror fan, if you teach horror.
This is perfect for you if you're any of these things. I mean, we tried to make a class that would have been perfect for us 30 years ago. What is the exact thing that we wanted? And one of the things we want you to, one of the reasons why this is important is that we feel that this is the moment in American history that we have been waiting for, when the opportunities are there. I look at some of these opportunities and I just think, God, I hope I don't have too much scar tissue.
Right.
To move through the openings that are there. I'm just being honest with you about that. But you guys, you haven't been through that. You haven't been through the wars. You guys are tough and smart and creative. And what we're praying is that you what Jordan Peele, for instance, wants is to open the doors for the voices that have not been heard.
Yeah, he wants to specialize in non-white genre films.
That's right. And every one of these people, I'm guessing, that makes it to that level, what they want is they want to bring others along with them. So if you've got it within you, we've got something that's just great for you.
So if you sign up for the Sunken Place, it's basically 6 weeks of classes. They're not all consecutive because of our schedule, but you'll have 6 sessions with us that would be similar to this. We do a lecture. You can comment throughout the lecture. And in some cases, we might have a guest, interviews with artists and creators such as Jordan Peele. We will be discussing movies. You'll have homework. You will have to watch movies. We're going to assign primarily short stories.
Yeah, I like short stories better because you learn the entire process in a relatively short period of time.
Yes, and you can really, you can cover a lot more artists that way, and it's a short course, and it's a short overview. But, of course, we can recommend novels.
And this is all digital download. You don't have to come to California. You can take it on your own schedule. You can attend live or you can watch later. We have done everything that we can to make this as available to the people who need it as possible. So we have students already from all over the world.
Yeah,
we have South Africa. We have inquiries from Scotland.
Right. There's one student who's like, I'm not going to be there. I'll be in this country this time. I won't have Wi-Fi. That's fine. Your digital download link will be waiting for you, and you don't have to miss a beat before catching up. That's right.
And the thing is that even though it doesn't start until the middle of January, before you get there, we've got great stuff for you that you'll get immediately on signing up.
To keep you occupied. Because we're not just offering the Sunken Place Black Horror class, although if that were by itself, it would be pretty awesome just by itself. But we're giving you some extras, including an MP3 for the first 25 people. Tananarive Secrets of a Writer's Life. That is just a lecture MP3 where I talk about what I think the greatest secrets are to success.
And you talked about some things here that you've never talked about publicly before.
Okay, good. Yes, so that will be for you. One of those secrets will be yours. Then the next bonus for the next 25 people, I did another lecture on writing the thriller, which some of you might find helpful, or you might have a friend who would. Remember, getting this course doesn't necessarily have to be for you. It could be a gift for that perfect someone.
Christmas is coming up.
Christmas is coming up. And then the third bonus is Stephen Barnes, this guy right here, did a great lecture. If you've seen Steve lecture a lot, well, you know. A lot of you know. But it's writing horror screenplays. So there's that, just lecture format on writing horror screenplays. But we're taking it even farther than just the lectures. We did a 4-week virtual screenwriting workshop previously where we had students and we did lectures. We had special guests, including Luke Cage showrunner Cheo Hidari Coker. Actually, he was the guest. That was a separate course unto itself, which we would offer to you now. The value of that would be $12.50 just by itself. So
if you're taking that into college.
So just to be clear, we're offering you the Sunken Place Black Horror course, which we were about $12.50, especially if you were trying to take it through an institution like UCLA. It's not for credit. It's not affiliated with UCLA, this version we're selling. But I'm the instructor, and it's my material. It's the same material.
That's right.
The first bonus would be my recording Secrets of a Writer's Life. Another bonus would be recording Writing Thriller. Steve's, I think that's a DVD, is it not?
Well, it's MP4 digital download.
Digital download, so that's Writing Horror Screenplays. And then I was just rewatching the virtual screenwriting workshop to make sure we had it together for this offer, and it is a course unto itself. So you could be an absolute beginner, someone who just writes prose, and you've always wanted to learn how to write screenplays, and we have some tips for you. Or you might already know how to write screenplays. Like when Cheo Hidari Coker was listening to our lecture, he said he was loving it. He just he wanted to be a part of it just as listening himself.
And we're doing something else, and this is doing something special. In January, once we get through the holidays, we're going to do an additional webinar, which is making your movie. Basically, it's going to be called 0 to 60 million, showing you how we made movies starting with no budget, leveraging social media, and how other people have done the same thing.
To much higher budgets.
To much higher budgets. That basically there is a path to go from 0 all the way to the studio film, and we're going to be talking about that and giving you the tools that you would need to do this yourself.
So it's a lot, but remember, the cornerstone of this offer is the Sunken Place. It's the Black Horror course that Jordan Peele surprised at my class at UCLA and talked about on Colbert. It is the overview of the Black horror literature and cinema up to this point, but all of these other extras, the Writers of Life, the Writing the Thriller, the Writing the Horror Screenplay, the Virtual Writing Screenshot, how to make a movie with no resources.
Well, what we're saying is we're going to talk about the past of black horror, starting from Birth of a Nation, where we were the monsters, all the way to Get Out, and then open the door to the future. We believe that some of you are the future of black horror.
If it isn't you, it is someone you know. And if you were going to just get all of these things individually at full price, that would be worth more than $4,000. But we're not asking you to spend $4,000. All of those offers, including the Sunken Place and all those extras, until midnight today. We've extended our deadline already 2 days. So until midnight today, it's $298 for the 6-week black horror course, the Sunken Place, and all those extras.
The writing the thriller, writing horror screenplays, the complete screenwriting class, the making your own movie class. Tananarive coached some of our students into making movies. Your iPhone has the technology necessary to make wonderful movies, and we're gonna have interviews with we're gonna talk about crowdfunding. We're going to talk about zero budget filmmaking, cheap filmmaking, how to promote these things, how to,
And even if you don't want to make film, even if you're just a fan and you deep down just want to learn how to enjoy art with more insight, you know, so maybe you were missing some of the racial messages in Get Out, or you didn't quite get what Blackula was going for.
Right.
Then this is your chance to learn all those things, and you will get all that for a special price of $298. We actually have 2 URLs. It's either www.sunkenplaceclass.com or www.realhorror.com. Either one gets you to our sales page. And remember, it's until midnight tonight that we can offer this rock bottom price of $298 for all of that, for you or for that horror loving friend in your life.
So we have a 30-day guarantee. If you don't like it for any reason, you want your money back, we're happy to refund it. There's no risk. We're basically giving you the store. We're doing everything we're capable of doing to either help you understand horror, help you teach and create a context for others, or if you have the heart to want to create your own fiction or film just for your own entertainment, or to see whether or not you can throw the dice and try to get into Hollywood, we've got the tools. We've been there. We've been in the meetings. We know the people. We're opening our Rolodex to you. We're going to have, there's nothing quite like this, because there's no one who's teaching these things who both understands it and can do it. And you can hear Tananarive in the background playing music. Yes, my children. You will find that if you open your hearts and open your minds, if you have the knowledge, if you have the drive, oh yes, you play it, girl. If you have something within you that you want to give the world, we will show you how to take it and move forward.
Anyway,
we will.
Yep. We just want to do a little organ for you. But in any case,
fear at last. Thank God Almighty.
There is fear at last.
There is fear at last.
So I guess we should go back to our faces.
Yeah, let's go back to our faces.
We're just having a little fun. We're just having a little fun.
Can you forgive us for having fun while we're doing this? Just say yes if it's okay with you that we have some fun while we're doing this.
In a while, I didn't have my hymn book in front of me to really bring it like I wanted to bring it.
There you go.
The next time I can practice for that.
Type in the URL in there. So that's the primary thing that we want to do. And we really, really want to remind you, until midnight tonight, the price has got to go up. So if you want to try this with a full money-back guarantee, please do.
And we have a good-sized class already, so it'll be nice.
It's going to be massive. We're going to have so much fun doing this. We only have room for 200 people in there because literally the webinar platform, I am worried about it getting more than that. I want to make sure that the webinars that we can present are professional and straightforward, and that we're giving everybody an opportunity to interact.
But we definitely have room for you.
And we definitely have
room for your friends. So please, actually, just spread the word. If you're watching this and you're thinking, I don't know if that's for me, then that's fine. Just pass it on to that horror lover in your life, that child you have, maybe middle grade to high school age. Well, some of the films, maybe high school.
We're PG-13.
Well,
we're okay.
Some of them firmly are. But in any case, www.realblackHorror.com for the Sunken Place class. And we made a promise to you that if you stayed till the very end, we would have a little special surprise. So,
that's right.
And
so special
surprise. So is it the first?
Well, up until midnight tonight.
Until midnight tonight. Until midnight tonight, if you sign up for this course, we will send you a free signed copy of a book either of us has written. You may want a copy of Blood Colony. You may want Steve's masterwork, Lion's Blood. We will send you a copy of any book we can physically get our hands on, either in our
Amazon, anything that's
Amazon,
available on Amazon.
We'll
buy it and sign it and send it to you.
And this is a special bonus.
Christmas present for a friend.
A special bonus for the last day of our discount price, which is today. It ends at midnight. So yeah, get your free copy of one of my books or one of Steve's books, and you can start your screenwriting class right away if you like,
right.
Or if you're not interested in that, just wait until January when the horror class will start, January 13th, with the first live webinar with a lecture, and we'll have sent you your homework before then. Don't think you can start without homework.
All right. So that's it. Well, we had a couple questions on here. Just want to.
It's for some reason hard for me to navigate. Oh wait, here we go.
Okay. One question was, do we discuss older black horror? Absolutely.
Yes.
Think of Blackula and Ganja Hez and
Abby.
Yes, there was a period of time in the 70s when these movies were being made, and then it went away. It only lasted for about 5 years.
Yes.
5-6 years.
And then again in the 90s, there was a burp of all kinds of black art. That's when I started publishing. A lot of us started publishing in the 90s, and there was a lot of great film in the 90s, and then that kind of just died too. So now I would say we're entering what I would call the third wave. Yeah. And the third wave is the wave that cannot be receded because there's too much force behind it. The timing is right. And also social media makes it possible for us to flow around Hollywood. Yes. That we can do things directly. You can get a deal, and you can get a distribution deal, a movie deal by putting a good little film up on YouTube. Right. So you made yourself with literally you can do that. Nothing but your iPhone. Do you understand what the great equalizer is? This iPhone. So there is nothing to stop you now if you've got that heart. If you know someone who wants to make movies, if you know someone who wants to get out there, we can literally show you how to get into the business. And while you're doing that, you can also learn about that great tradition of black horror that you did not even maybe know existed before Get Out. That's right. Because there's a lot of work out there that makes Get Out possible, and also adds more resonance to the themes in Get Out. So stop settling for other people telling your story. And you're also going to be able to take this, like I said, if you're a woman, you're gay, you're Muslim, you are an atheist, if you're an outsider, you have any outsider status, and trust me, everyone is an outsider viewed one way or the other. If you've got a story to tell, if you have pain that you've been shoving back, put a smile over your face and smiling out here, while on the inside you're wondering, does anyone see me? Does anyone care? That is the source of your power. And when you collapse that wave, when you stop pretending to be something that you're not, and you put it out there, and you say, this is who I am, deal with it, that is when you have the chance of changing the world. And you can face your fear, express your fear, and turn that pain into power. Thank you all so much for being here this afternoon. Hope you have a great week going up to the holidays. And don't forget, midnight tonight is the deadline to sign up for the discount. www.realblackhorror.com. All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.